Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. My name is Oliver Smith. I'm the former managing editor of AltFi and currently a consultant news editor at Fortune magazine. It is my absolute pleasure to be back for Innovate Finance Global Summit, this 10th anniversary of the event. Thank you. I'm delighted also to be joined by Rishi Khosla, the CEO and co-founder of SME lender and profitable fintech unicorn OakNorth. Rishi, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you.
OakNorth is a rare beast among UK fintech unicorns, not just profitable, but increasingly profitable. Your just published results for 2023 revealed pre-tax profits up 23% to 187 million last year. You've done that during a highly challenging economy. So what is OakNorth's secret?
First of all, it's very great to be back for an Innovate Finance conference. Amazing that's been going 10 years. And if you think about how the landscape's changed over this 10 years, it's also been immense. So Ollie, to come to your question in terms of getting growth and profitability, when we started the business, we were very, very clear that actually we were in the game to build a profitable business. And therefore, from day one, we set out to do that. That leads through how our culture, the DNA of our teams, et cetera, how we all think, i.e., is there a very strong commercial rationale in us doing something? If there is, great. If there isn't, we're not going to test it, right? So how do you have that at a very foundational basis? And then when you think about OakNorth, clearly over the 8.5 years we've been around, we've lent over £10 billion. One critical thing in lending is making sure you get the money back on the other side. Mm-hmm. So i.e. credit is incredibly important, credit quality. And over there, we've obviously invested over years in our whole approach around credit data analytics, et cetera, with our credit intelligence product, and making sure that that drives not only efficiency, but that drives good results for in terms of credit experience. But in essence, I would say actually the most important thing is delighting customers, having your customers be your prominent sort of mouthpieces into the market, and help that actually generate and drive growth in the business. So even today, about 80% of the volume we do gets driven from referrals from existing customers and their advisors, and that just has incredibly positive effects on the business overall.
Interesting. We've heard the US mentioned a few times this morning already, the opportunities, but also the competition, obviously. We were talking backstage, and you said you'd just come back from 3 weeks in the US. Mm-hmm. What does that market look like for OakNorth?
So the US is really interesting. I would actually say in FinTech very specifically, the amount of innovation that we actually have here in the UK and arguably some other markets outside the US is more innovative than actually what you experience in the US in the FinTech space. So I think that the opportunity and the way that the fintech industry has been built up, and at least for ourselves as well, the way that we built ourselves up, I think is actually playing into relatively white space in a much, much, much larger market in the US. So I think for a lot of us, and again, some of this goes back to what Bim was talking about, even the last panel, it's you build a good business in a market, you want to go multi-locational. The US is an incredibly attractive market if you can penetrate it. Now again, the number of more traditional financial services companies that have gone to the US and have failed have been large. The number of FinTechs, European FinTechs, which have already tried to go to the US and already retreated or downscaled, has also been material. So it's not an easy market to penetrate in any way, shape, or form, but it's a large market.
Interesting. Something I wanted to ask you, this is obviously called Diary of a FinTech CEO. So I wanted to dig into what are Rishi's productivity secrets leading a business like OakNorth through crises like COVID, Brexit, and before that. What would you say is your productivity hack or secret for leading OakNorth?
I try to innovate on that regard all the time. So look, there's some very basic personal sort of aspects, and then there's aspects on how we organize ourselves. The personal aspects are wake up early, always work out, always do my yoga, my meditation, like 7 days a week, drink lots of water, no caffeine, lots of green juices. So it's like eat healthy, and it's like really simple in terms of body for me. If you put only healthy stuff into your body and you exercise your body will actually perform better. And for me, the one which wasn't obvious to me was sleep, because I'd gone down to like average 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. When someone said at 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, you're probably operating at like 4 or 5 out of 10 in terms of your capacity. And if you increase that, you probably get closer to whatever, 6, 7, 8 out of 10. So that convinced me to get a few more hours every night. So that's the personal side. In terms of sort of how we organize ourselves as a company, I think having very clear goals which align the teams in a way to row in the same direction is incredibly important, because I think every time you don't have those aligned goals and you sort of got people a couple of degrees or a few degrees each way, you end up just going slower to wherever your target is. So using OKRs on a quarterly basis and really sticking with them, incredibly important. In terms of time management, you talked about examples through Brexit, COVID, etc. It's how do you right size the amount of time you spend on meetings, and what do you need to have a meeting for versus not. And is sometimes asynchronous is better. Sometimes it's better to do things live. Sometimes it's better not to have to schedule a meeting, just to be able to pick up the phone. It's amazing on how out of habit we are in terms of just calling someone when you need them or to have a discussion versus actually scheduling something. And not assuming every time you book something, it's going to be an hour block. It could be a 12-minute block. It could be an 18-minute block. And just right-sizing that to how much time you think the discussion's actually worth versus not.
Interesting. Some good tips for any founders in the room looking to be more productive. I'd like to ask you about product, if I can, because OakNorth did something very interesting in November when you launched your current accounts, which, as a journalist, surprised me because it was a big move and not something I was expecting. And previously, you have fully focused on the lending piece. What was the logic behind introducing current accounts, and what does that business look like today?
So let's back up. Like you said, OakNorth very much has established itself as a business which was addressing, let's say, the largest issue for a number of companies, i.e. access to finance. So we focus very much on lending for the 8 odd years that we've been running. The number of times we've heard customers come to us and sort of say, why can't we provide them more holistic banking solutions? The experience they're getting from their incumbent banks is less than delightful, and a lot of the neobanks just don't deal with the complexity and requirements that our customers typically have. So you hear this enough and you sort of say, we should be looking at this because it's so close to what we are doing already. And it wasn't just current accounts, but it's effectively current accounts, savings accounts, going into payments, cards, etc. So for us, it was very logical to say, okay, can we actually play in that space and create a delightful experience to mirror the experience that we have on lending? If we can, actually the integration of that makes sense for us and for our customers, and i.e. the customers have been the ones who are calling out about it, it's for them to be able to live much more within that experience across all of their banking activities. So that was the logic in terms of going down that path. In terms of where we are with it, we've very purposefully said we're going to really walk our way through this. So we're in beta still with our customers, and we expect to be there for a while, because again, the complexity of dealing with the customers we do means that there are lots and lots of edge cases, and we clearly want to play all that through. And again, just to define the customer base that we're focused on, it's what we call the missing middle, So companies between, on average, $1 million to $100 million in revenue, and call it sort of $1 million or so to 15-odd million in an EBITDA.
Interesting. Do you think that product will remain in a sort of beta stage for the rest of this year, or?
I think for a chunk of the year, at least.
Interesting. So the fintech industry has faced a ton of challenges over the last 18 months. Layoffs, down rounds, less liquidity in the market as a whole, delayed IPOs, and the rest. I'd love to hear what your outlook on the sector is. We've heard some positivity this morning. We've heard some optimism. What's your take?
So let's be clear. Obviously, the down rounds, the lack of liquidity, et cetera, aren't just specific to fintech. They are just the overall environment, right? And you can go back, at least in the private markets, back 2-3 years ago, you had sort of the monetary easing effects of SoftBank, Tiger, et cetera, all playing into the funding market, a lot of which clearly found itself into the fintech space as well. With those walls of money no longer there, that drought, in a way, I would say is always healthy in any cycle in terms of building up an industry. So we've come off an environment of overfunding, lots of companies which arguably shouldn't have got funded, a lot of companies who needed 100 ended up with 300 or 500 because it was available. Coming off that makes a healthier sort of, in a way, cleaning out or clearing out. And I think we're still going through that process. We're continually looking at potential acquisitions. We see opportunities in the market. As we evaluate those opportunities, you actually get under the skin of some of these companies. And you just see, you know what, how can I put it? There wasn't a lot of robustness behind these businesses, but yet they were able to raise 50, 100, 150 mil of capital. So I think that's where we're coming off in terms of environments like this also help drive the strongest entrepreneurs to take the opportunities and bounce back from them. You see a lot of amazing companies which are being started and built during downturns. So I think that everything becomes cheaper. Fewer people are running in the same way, at least at the earlier stages. In terms of financing opportunities, I do think that the market is already eased compared to where it was last year. But as I said, I don't think we're necessarily going back to where we were.
Interesting. Okay. Last question from me, because we only have a minute left. We heard the Prime Minister earlier mention OakNorth, calling out OakNorth as one of those success stories in fintech. And we heard Bim talking about clearing the way for fintech to do great things. With an election coming up this year, what would you like to see from policymakers to support fintech and your business more broadly?
So I'll very quickly break this into two. I think there have been a lot of good things which have been announced, like the Mansion House Pact, like the work which is being done by the London Stock Exchange around sort of the private venue, et cetera. The challenge that I think I have with both of those initiatives and others is just a timeline to get those things going, getting those in place quicker and actually being able to have an impact during 2024, I think would be very, very positive. On the other side, we actually commissioned a group called the Social Market Foundation to actually go out and have this conversation with a much broader set of founders and angel investors, venture investors, et cetera. Talent density was one thing which was called out, counter to what we heard on the previous panel, especially that talent who's used to scaling up businesses. I think in terms of finding engineers, relatively easy. Finding product people, I'd still say hard, but finding people who've really had the experience of scaling up businesses and know what that looks like and have the scars around it, I think very much lacking. And through that, we've got a whole host of recommendations, which are on the Social Market Foundation website. Given we're out of time, I'm not going to go through them.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have time for. Can I get a very warm round of applause for Rishi Khosla?
Thank you. Thank you.